What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I'm not in my natural habitat. I'm actually over here at DV's for a change, and it feels good being back over here. Got Casper running, so we know the whole deal with that, and I'm not going to go back into it. So I thought for today I would do a change of pace and show you something else that we have been working on, along with everything else that's on our plate. As you know, it takes a lot to really impress me when it comes to aftermarket parts. I believe in the same philosophy as what DV does as far as promotion. If it's good, we really promote it. If it's mediocre, we ignore it. And if it's BS, we expose it. And when it comes to cylinder heads, it really takes a lot to impress me these days. I know that sounds bad, but once you see all the different aftermarket cylinder heads out there, it really takes a lot, something special to stick out in my eye. In the case of Mixed Up Boss and the Greg Brown's Hammerhead Performance Engine cylinder heads, that's one example. It's completely different and it's off the chart. In fact, I'm going to have another video coming up on those heads soon. But we're going to rewind the clock and get you back to my roots. See, once upon a time, way before YouTube and all of this, I had a shop. And it was called Crossroads Performance. And the majority of the work that I did during that time period was late model Mustang performance. Yes, you heard that right. I was knee deep into the EFI world and making these little Ford modular engines run way faster than anyone's expectation. So what am I talking about? What am I standing here in DV's shop referring to? There's one particular cylinder head that was a complete game changer for me and for DV, Micah, all of us, because I was stuck in the 2-valve 4.6 world. I don't have to explain. Most of you already know that it gets shunned in the performance world, and for good reason. As delivered from the factory, it's not the hottest engine out there. In fact, this engine, when it replaced the 5.0 in the 96 Mustang, was almost a complete disaster. Even though they carried the same horsepower ratings, the 4.6 was consistently about a half second slower in the quarter mile. I mean, we were already talking about a high 14-second quarter-mile car with the 5.0. When the 4.6 come out, man, it was a struggle to get out of the 15s. Most of the time, it was a mid-15-second car. So performance parts came very slow for the 2-valve mod motor because it had to take time to catch on like anything else. Well, I bought one. You know, lo and behold, not knowing any better, my buddy had bought a Ford Cobra and we were totally impressed with it and how it ran. Boy, was I disappointed when I got the Mustang GT. Thinking that the 4.6 was the same, it wasn't. The performance was horrible. The first pass I ever made at Shadyside Dragway with the Mustang ran a 972 at 72 miles an hour. That's hardly setting the earth on fire, if you know what I mean. But I started modifying it like I would any other traditional engine car combination. Did the typical bolt-ons, exhaust, gears, headers, so on and so forth, until there was no other bolt-ons left. And when it got to that point, I had to go inside the engine. The year was probably about 2007. I started racing this 4.6 car pretty competitively and starting out with stock parts. Did okay with it, with what I had. You know, granted, was able to make it an 11-second car with stock parts minus cams and intake and, you know, the basic stuff. But when it come time to really develop some horsepower, it was going to take a cylinder head change, and luckily Trickflow stepped up to the plate. Around 2009, I guess it was, we got word that Trickflow was going to be coming out with a 2-valve 4.6 cylinder head, and boy was I excited. I thought this is going to be it. And lo and behold, this is what they came out with. And you may be asking, well, why are we doing these heads right now? Well, in an earlier video of mine, I showed you a Crown Vic that I have. Now this Crown Vic's been running on 7 cylinders for nearly 4 years, I guess. And it needs some TLC. So DV and I, we got this plan together probably a year and a half ago. It's been a long time, but I was knee deep in Casper at the time of building a Trickflow headed 4.6 2-valve engine for the Crown Vic and making it a respectable street performer out of it. And using the same tricks that I did, 10, 15 years ago to create a very usable package, because in this day and time, most people try to say, just go ahead and Coyote swap it or Godzilla swap it. While that sounds good on the surface, that can get pretty expensive once you get into the nitty-gritty. But if your car already has a 4.6 2-valve, these cylinder heads can deliver power like you wouldn't believe. So just how powerful are these heads? I'm going to insert some video here for you to go back and watch. We won the Performance Street Championship when David and I was actually competing against each other. You've seen that in a short not too long ago that I put up. And then we went on to win the first 2 Mod Motor Nationals, the Battle of the Underdogs. We cleaned house with these Trickflow heads. They're pretty bad. It worked really good until the turbo guys finally figured it out. Andrew Lavender, I got to give him a shout out, because he kept refining his turbo combination and actually got the combination into the 480 range, if I'm not mistaken. And he recently switched over to the Coyote platform, but I'm going to put a link to his channel up here in the upper corner so that you can see all of his endeavors at the Mod Motor Nationals with the turbo Trickflow headed combination as well.
Here's our #1 qualifier and the smallest cubic inch in the class. Micah Monteleone, 281 cubic inches of modular non-push rod engine here. That's what they call it. Push rods are precision.
What makes these heads so special compared to the stock casting cylinder heads? Good question, right? Well, let's begin here in the chamber, since the cylinder head is laying this way. The first thing that the engineers at TFS did was totally re-engineer the valve placement in the combustion chamber, allowing for a bigger intake valve in comparison to the stock head. This is a 184 intake valve right here. And if we put a 184 valve in a stock PI or non-PI head, it gets very close to the cylinder wall and the chamber is very shrouded. You can't get around that. It's all because of where the intake valve is actually placed. But if you notice, these valves are on different angle planes. That's right, because as delivered from Ford, the engine has what I would call a reverse wedge design. The wedge is facing towards the intake valley versus towards the exhaust side on a traditional V8. And so Trickflow decided, this is not good for performance, so they moved the intake valve off of the plane that it was existing on and moved it towards the intake itself. And then went from stock 11-degree valve angles down to 9-degree valve angles. And what that did is create a very shallow chamber that you can obtain some really good compression numbers without having to have any kind of dome on top of the piston. These particular heads that are behind me, they have 38cc chamber, and when you combine that with just say a regular flat top piston in a 4.6 engine, you can get close to 14-to-1 compression if you play your cards right. That is so key to making power, because the flame propagation that you get with a flat top piston with that high of compression is everything. Most of the time when you deal with very high compression ratios, you have a normal huge dome that you're having to deal with, and that's not the case with these heads. And the flame has to travel across that dome, and the distribution is not good. So with this here, you get all the benefits of the compression without any of the drawbacks of having a huge dome, which increases the piston weight as well. So as you can see here, here's the intake port and the work that DV's been putting into the port design. And up top, you notice that there are other changes that are incorporated in this head that's not found in the stock head. And it's something very important. It is actually removable cam towers. With the stock head, the cam towers are actually cast into the head, so if a cam galls up one of the journals, the head is pretty much junk, unless you bore it and put inserts in it, which turns into a whole ordeal. With this system here, if you mess up a cam journal, you can replace the tower and then you're right back in business. It's good stuff. You can see the valve arrangement and the different locations compared to stock. This is a really good head, especially as cast. But if you want to know more about the intricate details of the specs of what DV got out of the flow numbers, he's going to have a video coming out here in the next few days, so you need to stay tuned to that. So what are our plans for these cylinder heads? Like I said, we've been working on these cylinder heads. Well, DV has, let me rephrase that. I've been tied up with Casper, which you already know. But what are the plans? The plans are we're going to build an engine that way that I could just replace the engine that's in the Crown Vic right now. So what we're going to do is take the budget-minded approach to this. We're going to use the stock crankshaft. We're going to use the stock block. We're going to put a decent set of rods and pistons in it and call it a day. And we're going to put those Trickflow heads on with a set of cams that work really good. We've got specs that we know about because way back in the day, DV and I did a ton of cam testing for 4.62 valves. And we're going to dig into the archives and pull out our favorite grinds. So let's go see what DV has to say about this little project. What do you think, David? We gonna have some fun with this?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're going to be able to go racing on a very casual basis. Like, we don't know we're going to go racing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 5 o'clock we're all set to go racing, right? Just throw the stuff in the back of the car, drive over there to Mooresville and go for it.
You know what our project is? And let me tell you, when it comes to doing product reviews, if you will, I try to stay out of that. But if it's a really good product like these TFS heads, I want to put a spotlight on it because they are a blessing in the modular community. Now, do you have to port these heads? No. These heads are unbelievable out of the box in what they will do. And when you port them, guess what? It takes you even to the next level. But if you want to see that stuff, you're going to have to check out DV's technical aspects of what he has found working on that cylinder head, and you will not want to miss it. So until next time, this is Andy from Unity Motorsports Garage. I will catch you later.